Hello and welcome friends. In this particular module, I wish to discuss about challenges and opportunities in municipal solid waste management in India. In this particular module, we will discuss about the background of municipal solid waste management system, need of change in decision making for sustainable management, municipal solid waste management implementation, constraints and recommendations, initiatives from Government of India for municipal solid waste management in India. We'll also brief review the implementation of collection fee in developed countries, and in light of the contents mentioned at the end, we will discuss about the challenges and opportunities in India. So as you learn the content, you will be able to state need of change in decision making for sustainable management, various initiatives taken by Government of India for better municipal solid waste management, and lastly, challenges and opportunities in India. Let's have a brief background for the points that we wish to discuss further. As far as India is concerned, due to its population growth, rate of industrialization, urbanization, and related economic growth, there is a significant increase in the generation of municipal solid waste. However, about 80% to 90% of this municipal solid waste is disposed of in landfills, leading to air, water, and soil pollution. Also, the dumping of such solid waste in unauthorized areas, and also its open burning is very common. In general, the management system related with the solid waste is very weak, and citizens do not bother much and also are not much aware of waste management related issues. Their carelessness attitude towards the waste management is a big challenge for urban local body. Also, as far as urban local bodies are concerned, there is a lack of technical and trained manpower. The community awareness and their involvement is not up to the mark. There is a lack of expertise and exposure to modern techniques and best practices associated with the solid waste management. There is no formal mechanism for awareness creation. Also, there is no updated management information system in order to understand the flow of solid waste. Also, The funds are not available to the required extent, as well as even if the funds are made available, the utilization capability of the urban local body is questionable. In the recent rules, non-government organizations are expected to perform in many ways. If we refer to the provisions of Municipal Solid Waste 2000, it will be more clear. However, subsequently, in order to have their role in this particular municipal solid waste management, there is no formal recognized system to act upon. If we consider the various issues related with the solid waste management at many cities, due to the appeal of the common people, there is a tremendous pressure from National Green Tribunal in order to bring about the changes in solid waste management. However, unfortunately, the urban local bodies have not performed to the expectations of the common people. Before proceeding further, it is worthwhile to recall the definition of the sustainable development. The sustainable development is associated with the meeting the needs of the present without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. If we think about the conventional approach for taking the decisions related with the waste management, mostly it is non-participatory, as well it is fragmented. Also, the decision making is more governed by the economy. It is in the favor of the society, and the environment is third option while taking the decision. However, as we see here, this particular traditional decision making approach is not helpful in order to change the scenario related with the waste management. There is a need to have this particular decision making transformed into ecosystem based approach, in which we can have the participatory approach as well integrated action by having society, economy as well as environment resting on three pillars equally, so that their common mean can be had with ecosystem and health. As such kind of a decision making will be more helpful in order to bring about the constructive changes in solid waste management. We can think of many difficulties associated with the environmental management practices in general, there is depletion of the finite resources. The renewable resources are overused. Open dumping of this particular waste is causing air, water, as well as soil pollution. There is no equality among economy, politics, social, as well as gender. One of the factors associated with the carelessness about the environment is extinction of various species. The way we see these particular pictures, child labor has to work for this kind of waste management. In order to earn his life, he has to work on such waste dumps. Some such kabadiwala has to find certain recyclables out of the heap of the solid waste in order to earn his life. We are bothering about the food management. However, the way you see in weekly bazaars, unsold vegetables, tomatoes, and many fruits are disposed as it is on the street itself. Shelter is one of the basic needs for the humankind. But inevitably, the poor people have to live in the immediate vicinity of such kind of waste dumps. Hence, as we think of this particular sustainability approach, just we can have small consideration for the various problems and related solutions. So, as discussed on the previous slides, there are various problems associated with the depletion of the finite sources. There is overuse of these particular renewable resources. There are issues related with the pollution of air, water, as well as soil. There are inequity issues related with the economics, political, social, as well as gender. There are many species and species which are endangered, and hence we have to go for cyclic material use. We have to emulate the natural cycles. We have to think and implement about reuse, recycle, recover. We have to go for safe, reliable energy. We must think about the conservation of the energy. We have to go for renewable energy. And as we deal with this particular energy crisis at various levels, we must think about the substitution of interim measures in order to come out of the situation. Also, in order to meet with the sustainability requirements, though directly associated, one has to think about life-based interests such as health of the people, creativity of the people, communication among various levels, coordination among the peers, appreciation, learning, as well intellectual and spiritual development. Presently, though there are many waste management practices that are not sustainable, as there is a wastage of energy as well as materials, there is an environmental degradation because of poor disposal practices, toxic, hazardous, and infectious waste, which is leading to health as well as safety implications. Also, there is a poor coordination among the stakeholders. There is a lack of accountability for waste producers. As we refer to the reports submitted by the Standing Committee on Urban Development, it has recommended many constraints in line with the perceptions of the people, and they have given certain recommendations. So as we think about these particular behavior of the people, behavior of the generator, waste segregation scenario at source, on-site processing, there is a common perception that maintaining the cleanliness, segregating the waste, as well processing it on-site is the responsibility of the urban local body, as the generator is paying the tax towards the waste management. This perception needs to be removed by educating, informing, as well communicating the people. As we think of the land use planning, the space requirement is not getting satisfied. As well, the recovery is not happening at the local level. Hence, there has to be the mechanism developed in order to manage the waste at the local level. The principle polluter pays is accepted over the world. However, as we see the reality, the polluter is not paying for the waste he is throwing into the atmosphere. So in order to make that particular polluter accountable, there is a necessity to implement the fees in proportion with the solid waste to be managed, which will assist to meet with the expenditure for various elements of solid waste management. Also, clusterization is one of the constraints. Here, there is a non-achievement of economic scale. It is essential for the state governments to take the initiatives for setting up the processing centers as well as even the sanitary landfills. In addition to these particular constraints, at most of the places, it is seen that there is a biggest challenge of the availability of the land for setting up these solid waste management facilities, as well the suitability thereof. This particular problem has arisen due to the explosion of the waste accumulation, waste generation, especially associated with the clusterization of the communities. In addition to the laxity experienced shown at various levels in the immediate past. It is quite discouraging to note the compliance to the Honorable National Green Tribunal orders for urban local bodies. As we see for a certain issue related with the solid waste dump sites, it was expected to have the existing dump sites fully transformed into the sanitary landfills as per the order dated July 2019. However, as we see the reality, out of the existing dump sites 3159, only 37 dump sites were reclaimed and just 10 were transformed into the sanitary landfill sites. As such, the big number of existing dump sites are as it is. Also, some of the information related with the soil pollution, air pollution, management practices, groundwater pollution, etc. was asked in form of supplement through these particular NGT orders. However, the urban local bodies could not provide that kind of the information at all. Giving consideration to the common scenario being observed at much of the places, the Associated Chambers of Commerce and Industry of India suggested the government to have this particular municipal solid waste management activity borne through the central government. As we see the comment received through the government, here it is clearly said that observing the sanitation is the responsibility of related state government. Here, as we see about this particular compliance scenario, as we see about the policy of the central government, because of the conflict arised, the Honorable National Green Tribunal has asked to deposit the amount in order to take care and resolve the issues related with the waste management. And in order to have this done, there is a huge amount that is lying in the escrow accounts against the execution of the action plan. There are many initiatives that are taken by Government of India. One of that was Swachh Bharat Mission, launched in 2014. The objectives were partially dealt with management of this particular solid waste in scientific way involving private sector. Also, after this particular Swachh Bharat mission, one more mission was launched on 25th June 2015 called as Smart Mission, and one of the objectives of this particular Smart Mission is to have the waste converted into the fuel and energy resources, as well to manage the waste biodegradable in nature by its composting. Also, the issue of construction and demolition waste was attempted to tackle, and it was expected to have it recycled as well as reduced. As we consider the expectation and the actual performance status, under this particular Swachh Bharat mission, it was expected to have these particular solid waste processed fully over all the 4041 ULBs. However, as we see, over these particular 34 states and UTs, as on September 2018, 100% door-to-door collection was facilitated over 69068 wards. As such, the objective was met with 82% of the extent. Whereas, giving consideration to the total generation, the segregation was facilitated just at 48%. However, as we think of the processing, as on June 2018, the waste was being processed to the extent of about 1/3 of its generation. It is worthwhile to see certain policy landmarks as well as initiatives taken by Government of India. The rules, policies, schemes and financial plans are formally initiated since 1989 itself, with the formulation of hazardous waste rules. As interim actions, various renowned organizations like NEEDI were involved in order to develop the proper strategies for municipal solid waste management. As we see, the hazardous waste, biomedical waste, and now, as we see subsequently, e-waste as well as construction and demolition waste is being treated as separate stream and is being managed through different set of rules. Also, time-wise, there is an involvement of court as well as various government schemes. In relation with the policies to meet with the actual requirement, even as we see, there is a provision of the huge amount to bring about the positive change. The recent one is formulation of these waste management rules 2016. The rules are also dictating now for the management of plastic waste, biomedical waste, e-waste, hazardous waste, as well as even the construction and demolition waste. For the implementation of these particular rules, the set of guidelines as well as the proper bodies to act to guide the people are also formulated. Also, there are number of incentives for waste management infrastructure financing. There is a provision for the tax exemption. Also, there is a provision for creating the funds by selling these particular carbon credits. As we think of the various schemes such as Jawaharlal Nehru National Urban Renewal Mission, Urban Infrastructure Development Scheme for Small and Medium Towns, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, and such provisions, under various heads, Government of India has taken the initiatives for giving the financial supports. As we think of some of the developed countries, say for example, if we think of this particular Seoul, Korea, they have implemented volume-based garbage collection fee. In such developed region also, as we see, before implementation of this VGCF as it is called, the waste generation was 12,238 metric tons per day. However, implementation of this volume-based garbage collection fee has created positive awareness among the people, and this waste generation is reduced to 7,000 metric tons per day. Also, in developed country United States, they have implemented the fee which is called as pay as you throw. Here, the people can choose various options based on their actual waste being thrown. They can choose the options such as full unit pricing, partial unit pricing, and also they can go for variable rate pricing so that the waste being generated would be collected fully, partially, or according to the requirement of the user. Here also, the way you see the inclusion of such PAYT scheme has caused the source reduction by 35%. Hence, seeing such examples, one can say that there is a necessity of certain user fee in proportion with the waste being generated. Also, it is worthwhile to note the waste generation associated with the management of COVID-19 pandemic like situation. As we see here, various generators are generating the waste to the lesser extent. Even as we see the waste transportation, collection, processing is also being hampered. Hence, these particular waste management practices are not expected to be static and one-time made, but they are expected to be dynamic to meet with the requirements under such unexpected situation. Also, one can see about some common expectation that the PPE kit or hand gloves or the containers of the sanitizer and such things were not part of the usual waste stream as far as earlier scenario is concerned. If we think of the biomedical waste, we may find some such waste containment as well as gloves and similar components. However, today there is a need to have such things used at our household as well as even similar containment zones. Under such circumstances also, we have to be very careful about the collection as well as treatment of such waste so that ultimately it won't hamper the human life, nature, in general the environment. Also, unknowingly, one must not burn such kind of the waste because their burning will release certain obnoxious gases, particulate, and it will create the long lasting impact on the society as a whole. As we think of the various constraints and the difficulties observed in the management of the solid waste, some researchers have expressed the need to have the three R's transformed into three S. Prior to discussing this particular 3R to 3S concept, one more thing we have to discuss and we have to cautious about the transfer of the technologies, especially from developed region to developing and undeveloped region. It is quite probable that if such technologies are transferred and implemented blindly, it may lead to the failures. This failure can be prompted in various reasons. Say, for example, the technologies being transferred may not be well known to all the concerned. As such, there could be low education at the different levels, and hence there may not be availability of the skilled technicians and also the lack of environmental awareness. One of the reasons could be the political instability with the failure of the long-term solid waste management actions. It is also commonly observed that municipal solid waste is not always the high priority for local as well as national policy makers. There is a scarce awareness of the administration with regard to the basic need of the population, and also there is a lack of willingness to promote the appropriate actions. There are ineffective institutional structures as well. One has to deal with the pervasive corruption practices. There is an inappropriate international funding and loans which support the various projects in the short term, thus preventing the successful transfer of the projects to the local authorities in the long term. The implementation of the technologies of the highest standard, the operations of which are subsequently prevented even due to lack of the spare parts as well as the technical manpower required in order to maintain such kind of technologies. Hence, if the circumstances are premature for the application of reuse, recycle, recover concept, which was which is expected as a part of circular economy strategy. One may think of need of sanitization, subsistence economy, and sustainable landfilling strategy for today's need. As we see, this 3S approach is not expected to occur at the different levels, but it is equally best on all three pillars. Here, the sanitization aims to improve the standard of living in the country, achieving the basic rules of hygiene in waste management. The subsistence economy is aimed at waste to economy concept, which is expecting to earn the profits and by creating business opportunities for the informal sector and recognizing their involvement in formalized way. Also, the way we see the example of these particular landfill dumps, the work according to the National Green Tribunal orders has created hardly any change, and hence with that kind of example there is a need of sustainable landfilling operations for safe disposal of residual waste over the various regions. So we can have the summary in light of the discussion that we had, and accordingly one may think of providing the solutions and hence creating opportunities for various stakeholders. This is a particular model that is presented showing imbalance in revenue expenses and cost sharing between state and central government. Let's take example of certain portion of the infrastructure that is required. Say, need of tricycles, storage containers, and certain transportation vehicles. There is a need of 20 crores, 10 crores, and 33.75 crores. So this is the actual requirement, rather estimated requirement for creation of such kind of the infrastructure. Here, the concerned urban local body could share meet 1/4 of the requirement, whereas it was expected to have the remnant borne by the state government. This is very unwanted situation as far as cost sharing aspects are concerned. As we see the various reports associated with the actual revenue expenses for solid waste management, metro cities spend around 10% of their budget on the solid waste management. However, the small towns spend 70% of their budget. The big cities, metro cities, can recover about 15% of the actual amount required through the property taxation. However, the question of the processing and safe disposal cannot be managed through such small amounts. There is a provision, and state governments do provide one-time budget in order to manage the waste at local levels. However, the concerned urban local body do not have the provision for operation as well as maintenance. Hence, there is a necessity to rethink about the utilization of the various practices to manage the waste, and there is a need to have the implementation of certain innovative approaches which will bring down the execution, implementation, operation and maintenance cost at various places to manage the solid waste effectively. Also, this is the common observation that the waste being generated, stored at the source, and the collection procedure operated by the urban local body is not compatible with each other. There has to be some lateral thinking about the improvement of these particular transportation and collection practices. We will proceed and discuss further as you see. But this is the costliest element as far as solid waste management is concerned. More than 50 to 60% of the total cost is associated with transportation and collection of the solid waste. There is a necessity to have the daily collection with the implementation of the user fees as far as non-slum residences are concerned. One has to think about the awareness program run for the various slums, as well to provide the various basic bins, waste containers in order to receive the kind of waste streams because of the large population density, congestion, non-accessibility, it may not be possible to collect the waste daily for slums and squatter houses. Also, for malls and markets, especially for malls, the waste may be homogeneous in nature. If we consider the typical market which is dealing with some specific commodity, one can implement some organized process for the collection as well as transportation. There are rules for the restaurants as well as hotels to manage their waste. There has to be strict adherence to these rules. As a part of 2016 rules, the attention is given for the management of the e-waste, hazardous waste, biomedical waste, etc. As we focus on various institutions, certain commercial complexes, instead of collecting, transporting, treating and disposing, more attention could be given on the recycling of the e-waste, paper, plastic, and also the packaging material. As we see about the transfer and transport, the capacity and type of collection vehicle is a major issue. Today, there are many kinds of the vehicles such as tipper, dumper, loader, sweeper, bulldozer, street washing and breakdown cranes like vehicles employed to have the waste transferred as well as transported. If we consider the common example of the waste collection, most of the times it is seen that waste collection route is not optimized. It is left to the discretion of the driver of that particular vehicle. Hence, there is a necessity of the optimization of this particular collection route by keeping on-job time for each of the routes in the even manner. Few software are available in order to have these particular routes optimized. However, the staff available with the urban bodies may not be having the expertise associated with that. Hence, the people who have expertise in such handling can extend their hand and assist the local bodies to optimize the collection routes. The same thing is true with the synchronization of the collecting vehicle requirement with the actual requirement of the collection point. The length of the travel could be considered in proportion with the capacity of the vehicle in light of the actual cost involved. Hence, there is a necessity of analysis, break-even analysis for the implementation of transfer station. Also, one has to devise operation and maintenance schedule for the machinery being used, and also to make the provisions, to make the budgetary provisions for sustainability of such infrastructure. As we think of this particular waste management, it is not a job of single. Lot many people are involved at the various levels. So there could be financiers, decision makers, generators, executors, waste collectors, non-government organization, health department, and even the data managers. As waste collection, transportation, transfer, recovery, recycling, processing, disposal, and the provisions of the legislation, provision of the finance are occurring at different tiers. There is a necessity to have the efforts made in a single direction and hence coordinated. As we thought of these particular 3 R's, the reduction is very important criterion. All the associated can think in all possible way to have the waste reduced at various levels, right from the source up to the disposal. The common man must avoid the consumerism, which usually leads to unnecessary generation of the waste. Also, one person's trash could be a resource for some other person. So the way we consider the example of kabadiwala or such informal rag pickers, the bottles, plastic, kind of textile, wood chips, and such things could be a resource for such rag pickers. So, as and where it permits, there is a necessity to involve such rag pickers. It is also essential to refine certain industrial as well as commercial processes to reduce the waste. One can think of avoid unnecessary packaging, and if at all the packaging is there, it can be re-brought into the utility chain, it can be recycled, or even it can be made mandatory for the suppliers in order to have that picked up and reused. One has to make about the substitution of the reusables as well as recyclables for disposables. If we think about the products which are durable in nature, long lasting in nature, it will also assist to reduce the waste at various levels. For all the issues we have been discussing, there has to be appropriate participation of all the stakeholders, essentially. We must also focus on the appropriate participation of the community, technical cell, NGOs, politicians, as well as health workers in order to facilitate effective and efficient implementation of solid waste management. As we discussed about the transformation of the 3R into 3S and reasons associated with that, one must avoid the blind adoption of the technology may lead to failure. Hence, the local governance must encourage the local researchers as well as various institutions for the development and use of indigenous local technology as well as machinery on the basis of the analysis of the solid waste being generated at the local level. Also, it is necessary to monitor the waste analysis frequently to note the change in waste characteristics in order to make the changes in the infrastructure being employed. So, such practices will be helpful to change the functional elements of municipal solid waste appropriately from time to time. In fact, the way we see the pollution abatement rules have been implemented in India since its independence. First act was observed to be implemented in 1853 as the Shore Nuisance Act. It is also called as Bombay and Colaba Act. So as we consider the various such legislative provisions, there are many. However, yet there are many issues which needs attention for the implementation of solid waste management. Now we are going for the smart cities. And as we know, the smart term is to be considered in terms of specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely goals. In light of these particular solid waste management practices, various stakeholders may think the adoption of this particular smart term as save money and reduce the trash. So, well, friends, we have discussed so many things. I hope you have understood the various concepts I tried to put forth. So thanks for your attention. Now, as we move ahead, we will discuss about sources, types, and composition of municipal solid waste. So bye till then, I wish you very happy learning. Thank you.